What's going on, everyone? Good morning. I hope you're all enjoying your Saturday so far. So I'm going to walk you through a train of thought that I've had since last night. Confused quite a bit of people, so I'm going to go ahead and take it slow and just walk you through my train of thought. So we're going to be talking about ETFs, or exchange-traded funds, relating to GameStop and AMC, and the questions that arise from them. So the type of ETF we're looking at. So there's different types of ETFs. We're going to be focusing on specifically leveraged ETFs. Now, remember, an ETF is an exchange-traded fund that trades on exchange just like a stock. However, it's comprised of many different assets, and those assets are selected by the ETF issuer, people like BlackRock, Vanguard, iShares, and the one we'll be looking at specifically, ProShares. So we're going to be looking at leveraged ETFs, which are marketable securities that use financial derivatives and debt to amplify the returns of an underlying index. While a traditional exchange-traded fund typically tracks the securities in a 1-to-1 basis, a leveraged ETF may aim for a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 ratio. So the ETFs we're going to be looking at, we're going to be taking a look at 3: UWM, URTY, and HDG. Now, HDG is the only one we're going to look at that's not a leveraged ETF. It's technically an alternative ETF that tends to replicate the investment returns of hedge fund betas. Now, what that means is they intend to replicate the portion of the returns of hedge funds that results from market exposure rather than manager skill. So moving on, this is UWM, the first leveraged ETF we're going to look at. Now you can see here the OTC derivative use is available because, again, remember, leveraged ETFs uses debt and derivatives. So now that we know that that's all active, look at the top holdings for this ETF. We have total return swap, repurchase agreement, total return swap, repurchase agreement, total return swap, and then this is the oddest one, the BlackRock Liquidity Fed Fund. Now look here, value change percentage, whoa, multiple thousands, 130,000. Port allocation change percent, over 88,000. What's going on here? And I'm just walking you through my train of thought. I'm not sure what this means. All I know is that this is clear evidence that BlackRock and the Fed are working together, and then you'll see the parties in a second that these belong to. Boom. Now, this is still UWM. According to Yahoo, the top 10 holdings, it matches what we just saw. Now, look at the owners: UBS, Citibank, Bank of America, Societe Generale, Goldman Sachs, BNP Paribas, Morgan Stanley, and then we see AMC right here at the bottom, right? 0.56% allocated. So the top 10 holdings have 126.87% of total assets. Right there, that's a red flag. They're all Russell 2000 related, and we know for a fact that GameStop and AMC are both in here. Now, remember the Fed, BlackRock Liquidity Fed Fund? Don't see that on here anywhere. It is on Fintel, not on Yahoo. Let's move on. Now, hold on. What's the swap? I know a lot of you are asking, what's a swap? What's a repurchase agreement? I'm glad I asked. Let me explain. Now, an index swap refers to a hedging contract in which a party exchanges a predetermined cash flow with a counterparty. Now, a counterparty is the person on the other end. So, for example, when we do a reverse repo from the Federal Reserve, the Fed is the one doing the reverse repurchase agreement, and the banks or the counterparties are the ones doing the repo agreement. So keep that in mind. So a counterparty on a specified date is going to purchase the debt, equity, or other price index and use this in exchange for one side of the swap. So it depends. The swap, it all depends on which side of the transaction you're on. If you're the one providing the asset, you're going to be on the reverse side. If you're the one providing the cash to get the asset, you're on the repo side. So a repurchase agreement is a form of short-term borrowing for dealers or banks in government securities. In the case of a repo, the dealer sells government securities to investors, usually on an overnight basis, and buys them back the following day at a slightly higher price, at which point they go and sell back to the Fed. A reverse repurchase agreement conducted by the desk or the Fed is also called a reverse repo, or RRP. And it's a transaction in which the desk sells securities to an eligible counterparty or a primary dealer with an agreement to repurchase that same security at a specified price at a specified time in the future. Now, looking at URTY, leveraged ETF, also has GameStop and AMC. What do you notice? Derivative use? Yes. Return swap, return swap, return swap, return swap, return swap, repurchase agreement, and then, of course, liquidity Fed fund from BlackRock. Almost the same breakdown. Now, I think those were out of sync as far as the pictures. Let me go fix that, actually. No, it wasn't. Never mind. Sorry about that. Okay. So now that we see the top 10 holdings, and I guess, yeah, I needed to scoot that up a little bit. So the Fed fund should be right here at port allocation -28. So basically the same setup. We have top 10 holdings, return swaps and repurchase agreements, and BlackRock liquidity Fed fund and derivative use. Now, who owns these? Of course, Citibank, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, BNP Paribas, Credit Suisse, UBS, Societe Generale, the same things we just saw. Also, what's in common? Russell 2000. This one is 249.34% of total assets, and then these make up a boatload altogether. 94.27% from Citibank. Now, at the bottom, what do you notice? AMC, same thing. Moving on. Now, last but not least, we're going to look at the alternative ETF, and it's called HDG. This also has GameStop and AMC, and it's the same thing. We have OTC derivative use, we have return swap, return swap, return swap, repurchase agreement, BlackRock liquidity Fed fund. However, the only difference in this one is that the number one holding is a United States Treasury bill. So I'm just walking you through my train of thought. I believe what this is telling me is that based on the fact that the top 10 holdings are repurchase agreements, index swaps, and the Fed fund, they're all Russell 2000 related, and the issuer for all three of these is ProShares. That tells me I need to look into ProShares. That also tells us that I'm highly and positively certain that this repurchase agreement, there's RRP, that we've seen historic volume and demand for, it's got to be related. It has to be. I mean, look at the breakdown of these ETFs that are in both stocks. Interestingly enough, they all are comprised of the same owners, and they all are reverse repurchase or repo agreements and swaps. So you have to understand, although the Fed is the one conducting the reverse repo, the fact that it says repo agreement, not reverse repo agreement, is almost perfect, because that is exactly how it would work if that's what they were doing. So anyways, that's my train of thought on this. Let me know if you have any questions below. This is crazy. If anyone would like to look into this further, all I'm doing is sharing my train of thought, and what I'm planning on doing next is looking into ProShares ETF issuer. So yeah, this is nuts. I mean, people should be running out in the streets because of this. I mean, that's nuts. 98,800%. And we're bitching about GameStop being up 5,000% from these stupid news media outlets. I mean, come on, people. Keep on trucking. I'll talk to y'all in a little bit.